Friday night under the lights at Celtic Park. That's always got a special feel to it, doesn't it? And tonight, it's not just about another match. It's about momentum, about squad rotation, about proving depth, and above all, about making sure the focus doesn't slip just days before one of the longest and most awkward away trips in recent club memory. We're talking Kazakhstan levels of awkward, folks. But before we even touch on what's happening later tonight against Falkirk, let's rewind just a bit. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, and Brendan Rodgers' press conference gave us a good look into the mood and mindset inside the camp. Let's start with the most obvious logistical challenge. That second leg against Kairat out in Almaty is not just far, it's ridiculous. 8 hours of travel with a kickoff scheduled for 9:45 local time. And that's if it doesn't go to extra time or penalties. So we're talking potentially a match that wraps up past midnight local time in Central Asia before flying all the way back to Glasgow to get back into domestic rhythm. It's no wonder Rodgers would have preferred a 2-hour flight to Bratislava instead. But that's Europe, or more specifically, that's UEFA. Speaking of which, someone asked the exact question that's probably crossed the minds of many. What is Kazakhstan even doing in UEFA? And to be fair, it's a fair question. Kazakhstan is a Central Asian country by geography, by culture, and by pretty much everything else, except for one small sliver of land on its western edge that technically lies in Europe. That's the loophole. That's what allowed them to make the switch from the Asian Football Confederation to UEFA back in 2002. Since then, they've been part of the European football scene and part of Celtic's long haul, travel nightmares. And it's not like this is unfamiliar territory for Celtic. We've been here before. This upcoming trip will be the 4th time the club has traveled to Kazakhstan for European competition. Brendan Rodgers himself has done this journey twice already in his first stint as manager. Guys like James Forrest, he's closing in on a full stamp card. This will be his 5th trip out there. Callum McGregor has made the flight too. John Kennedy, part of the coaching staff, will know it like the back of his hand by now. So the experience is there, and that helps a little. But no matter how many times you do it, it never gets easier. And the preparation has to be spot on. Brendan actually name-checked Brendan O'Neill, the club's first team operations manager, who's in charge of all the logistics. The guy's basically in charge of making sure 30 or so elite athletes, staff, and gear all make it through time zones, customs, and chaos, and still manage to perform at the highest level. Last time we went to Kazakhstan in 2017, Rodgers made a pretty unique call. The team stuck to British time. That meant players were eating meals at completely bizarre local hours, trying to keep their bodies locked into Glasgow rhythms while halfway across the globe. The hotel even agreed to change all the clocks to UK time. It sounds mental, but it kind of worked. So don't be surprised if Celtic pull the same trick this time around. Everything to gain a slight edge, right? But let's not jump too far ahead, because before we get to Almaty, there's work to be done tonight. Falkirk at home in the League Cup. It might look like a straightforward fixture on paper, but that's exactly the kind of game that demands attention and professionalism, especially in the middle of a European run. These are the matches where bad habits creep in if you're not sharp. Rodgers hinted at changes tonight, but not wholesale rotation. He called it a strong team with maybe some tweaks for the Livingston game instead, which comes right before the trip to Kazakhstan. That makes sense. You don't want players going into a match like that cold. So tonight's game becomes even more important, not just for progression in a cup, but also for keeping rhythm and sharpness across the squad. Injury-wise, it's pretty positive. Apart from 1 or 2 knocks, we're looking at a nearly full squad. And with that in mind, there are a few players fans are desperate to see get minutes tonight. Shinyamada, Jamai Simpson-Pua, Hayato Aramura, all names that have generated buzz. But will they start? Probably not. Rodgers is likely to go with a familiar spine, but we could absolutely see those 3 feature from the bench. It's all about game time management, especially with the madness of the next 10 days ahead. In goals, expect Sinisalo. Rodgers has said before, cups should be his, and frankly, he's earned that shot. He's looked composed, solid, and hungry. So unless there's a major change of heart, he'll be between the sticks. Defensively, it's an interesting one. Alistair Johnston and Cameron Carter-Vickers both need more minutes to hit full sharpness. And Rogers was clear about players, still working their way up to speed. So chances are we see both of them start. On the left, Liam Scales might get the nod again. Trust he could partner Carter Vickers in the center. No need to throw someone like Aramura in too early if he's still. Betting in. In midfield, Callum McGregor will start. Because of course he will. The man never sits out unless absolutely necessary. Around him, expect rotation. Maybe Luke McCowan, who's been in the media recently, gets a run. Maybe Odin Thiago Holm or Paulo Bernardo. There's room to test things here. Out wide, Maida could get the left flank again. As Rogers admitted, he sees him more as a winger than a central forward, even though Dyson has done a job through the middle when needed. On the right, maybe Yang gets another opportunity to show his flair. And up top, there's talk of Johnny Kenny starting, though it could easily be Adam Maida or even a surprise inclusion like Shinya Mata if Rogers wants to test him in that position. But again, let's not get too caught up in predicted. Lineups. What matters most is the approach. Rogers knows what happened last year against Falkirk. They gave us a bit of a scare. Twice they took the lead before the likes of O'Reilly and Turnbull came off the bench to steady the ship and turn things around. Falkirk won't have anything to lose tonight, and that makes them dangerous. Their squad has a few familiar faces too. Scott Bain in goals. Yes, that's Scott Bain. Calvin Miller, who made his breakthrough under Rogers the first time around. Scott Arfield, ex-Rangers. Even Brian Graham, who somehow went from management at Partick to playing again and stepping up a level. It's a mix of experience and hunger, and they'll be out to prove a point. Tonight's referee is Lloyd Wilson, a name not many will recognize, with John Beaton on VAR. So buckle in. It could be a bumpy one. And as for the crowd, it won't be a full house. Being a cup match is not part of the season ticket package, and that always impacts turnout. But even so, ticket maps suggest a solid showing. Lower tiers are mostly filled. Upper tiers have some gaps, but nothing dramatic. Maybe mid 40,000 in the stands. Still enough to make some proper noise under the lights. And make no mistake, this is a massive week for Celtic. The Falkirk match might not carry the glamour of Champions League qualifiers, but it sets the tone. It keeps the train moving. Win tonight and momentum rolls on. Stumble, and suddenly all eyes start to shift. Pressure builds, and the focus on Kazakhstan becomes a distraction rather than a target. Brendan Rodgers, for his part, seems in good form. His press conference this week had a lighter feel to it. Jokes about sweating up pedigree, about ties in hot stadiums, and just a generally better energy than recent ones, where the vibe around transfer questions had grown stale and tense. He seems more relaxed, more engaged, and that can only be a good sign. Speaking of transfers, not much to report. The deadline to register the squad for the Kairat tie has passed, and while there's still a window to bring in 2 more players, before next Tuesday night, it doesn't look like anything is about to drop imminently. Rogers did say hopefully, when asked if there could be movement, a change in tone from previous I don't knows. But let's not read too much into a single word. We've done that before. Still, fans will be hoping something's cooking behind the scenes. If someone is to come in, someone will have to come out. It's a strict 25-man squad limit. 1 in, 1 out. That's the rule. So the decisions at the fringes of the squad become even more crucial now. And as for Dyson Maida, there's been growing chatter about a possible move. Brentford's name keeps popping up. A couple of sources close to the club have said they're hearing whispers. Nothing concrete yet, but enough to stir a bit of nervous energy. Rogers, for his part, still seems confident Maida is staying. Talks over a new contract are ongoing, though no real update there either. And as for whether Maida could be used centrally again, Rogers hasn't closed that door, but it's clear he prefers him out wide if given the choice. There's a lot swirling around Celtic right now. Europe, transfers, injuries, young players pushing through. Senior players needing minutes. And in the middle of all of it, a Friday night cup tie that could go under the radar if we're not careful. But this is exactly the kind of game where a club like Celtic defines its standards. No slip-ups. No excuses. Handle business tonight. Rotate smart. Stay sharp. And then it's all eyes on Almaty. Right then, let's keep the energy going because this second part is where things start to really heat up for Celtic. Not just on the pitch, but behind the scenes too. The club is entering a critical moment in the season. One eye firmly on progression in Europe, one on domestic dominance, and another if it were possible, keeping track of player fitness, contracts, transfer rumors, and squad dynamics. It's a juggling act, and Brendan Rodgers is at the center of it all. Let's talk a bit more about the transfer situation, because while Rodgers didn't give anything away explicitly, there's definitely a shift in tone. Gone are the cagey responses of a few weeks ago, where every question about potential signings was met with a shrug and a "we'll see." Now we're getting hints, subtle maybe, but enough to suggest the club might finally be close to pulling the trigger on one or two targets. He used the word "hopefully," and sure, it's just a word, but in football, context is everything. For a manager who's been clearly frustrated with the speed and structure of Celtic's recruitment process, that single word could mean a lot. It might just be optimism. It might be a nod that someone's passed a medical. Or it might mean nothing at all. But supporters are hanging on every syllable right now because, let's be honest, this squad needs reinforcement if we're going to juggle the league and Europe properly. There's been talk, and let's stress talk, not concrete reports, about movement in and out. The structure of the UEFA squad list means if Celtic want to add a player or two before the trip to Kazakhstan, they need to remove someone too. No space for hoarding bodies. It's 25 in total, and that forces tough decisions. It also hints at why we haven't seen some of the fringe names much this season. It's not just about rotation. Some of them might not be part of the long-term plan. Now, one name that's not fringe, and never has been, is Dyson Maeda, and this week the rumor mill's been working overtime on him. Brentford's interest has been floating around for months, but lately it feels a bit more real. And it's not just media noise. A couple of people close to the club, not staff but folks who are usually pretty clued in, have heard similar things. Whispers, concerns. No one's panicking yet, but the possibility is real. Maeda's a unique player. His work rate is unmatched. His energy transforms games. But if there's serious Premier League money involved, Celtic will need to weigh up the value, both financial and tactical. Brendan Rodgers, to be fair, sounds pretty relaxed about it all. He's confident that Maeda stays, or at least as confident as any manager can be in the current transfer landscape. But again, there's no contract extension announced yet, and that makes things just a little bit edgy. Rodgers was also asked whether Maeda could be used centrally more often, and again, he didn't rule it out. But let's be honest, when you hear him talk, you get the sense that left wing is where he truly wants to see Dyson operate. It's where his pressing makes the most impact. It's where he can isolate defenders and burn past them. Playing him through the middle is more of a necessity call than a tactical preference. So if Celtic do bring in a new striker before the deadline, don't be surprised if Maeda locks back into that left channel before good. That brings us to a slightly broader point about the squad. Rodgers clearly has his core group. Players he trusts, players he's building around, but outside of that core, there are still question marks. We saw a few names emerge in pre-season. Simpson Pue, Shin Yamada, even Hayato Aramura, who all look sharp in moments. But we've not yet seen them make that leap into the matchday 11 in a meaningful way. That could change tonight. Rodgers might be saving them for the second half. Or maybe the plan is to slowly feed them into the team during matches like the upcoming Livingston clash, where rotation will be essential. Either way, these are the types of games that matter more than people think. Yes, Falkirk are from a lower tier. Yes, Celtic should be winning comfortably. But it's about rhythm, confidence, momentum. For a player on the edge of the squad, one good performance in a cup tie can change the narrative. It can push them into Rodgers' thinking ahead of a European night or a tricky away fixture. And speaking of those tricky fixtures, Kazakhstan looms large. The match against Kairat is more than just another qualifier. It's a statement of intent. Get through that tie and the club books its place in the Champions League group stage. That's prestige. That's money. That's 6 matches on the biggest stage in club football. Lose it, and it's the Europa League. Still respectable, but not quite the same spotlight. So this Falkirk match, as routine as it might seem, is really the calm before the storm. The crowd tonight might not be packed to the rafters, but it'll still be a strong turnout. Over 40,000 likely. And under the lights, with that European tension in the air, it could make for a proper Celtic Park occasion. It always helps when there's a few familiar faces in the opposition too. Scott Bain, for instance, a keeper who once wore the hoops. and now lines up against us, or Calvin Miller, who had a promising start under Rodgers the first time around. Even Scott Arfield, formerly of the other side of Glasgow, adds a bit of spice to the matchup. But the focus will be firmly on Celtic, on the shape, on the tempo, on which players look sharp and which look like they're still chasing match fitness. These are the moments when Brendan Rodgers really earns his money. He's not just thinking about Falkirk, he's planning 2-3 games ahead. Thinking about travel schedules, training loads, medical reports, and man management. He mentioned earlier in the week that Pittodrie was one of the hottest stadiums he's ever managed in, along with Deepdale of all places. Well, Almaty could be the next addition to that list. Temperatures might be sweltering, time zones will mess with sleep, so managing minutes now becomes crucial. He can't have players heading out to Central Asia undercooked. Every decision tonight will reflect that bigger picture. One player who could really benefit from a strong showing tonight is Yang. He's shown flashes of brilliance this season, but hasn't fully nailed down a starting spot. Tonight is a chance to assert himself, to say, you don't need to sign a right winger, I've got this. Same goes for someone like Johnny Kenny. If he starts and bags a goal or two, it shifts the conversation heading into Europe. And what about the defense? We've talked about Carter Vickers and Johnston getting minutes, but Austin Trusty's integration is just as important. A solid showing from him tonight, alongside the usual leaders, helps build that trust and chemistry. You can't just throw a back line together for a Champions League night and expect cohesion. It starts here, in matches like this. In midfield, Callum McGregor will do what Callum McGregor always does, set the tempo, drive the play, and hold everything together. Around him, we can see experimentation. Maybe someone like Odin Holm gets a chance to run the show in a more advanced role. Maybe Paulo Bernardo gets a start to remind everyone what he's capable of. The balance in the middle of the park is still evolving this season, and matches like tonight are crucial in that process. Off the bench, all eyes will be on the fresh faces. Will Shin Yamada finally get the minutes fans have been begging for? Will Aramura show the quality that had people buzzing in preseason? And what about Benji Siegrist? We've barely seen him. This season, could tonight be a reintroduction of sorts? The beauty of cup nights like this is that they offer opportunities for rotation, for rhythm, and for redemption. Players who've been on the fringes have a chance to step up. Players returning from injury can build confidence, and Rodgers gets a better look at what tools he has available for the bigger challenges ahead. Because make no mistake, the next 10 days could define Celtic's season. Win tonight, beat Livingston, and get through against Kairat. And suddenly, you're looking at a Celtic side with momentum, with belief, and with Europe in their sights. But any slip, any cracks, and the pressure ratchets up. So don't write this one off. This isn't just Falkirk on a Friday. It's a checkpoint, a test, a measuring stick. And if Celtic come through it with authority, it'll set the tone for what's to come. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Rumors swirling around Celtic Park have taken a dramatic turn this week, with whispers suggesting that winger Lil ABADA has privately described the dressing room as toxic and disunited, while no official statement has emerged from either. The player or the club? Several unnamed sources close to the squad insist that tensions have been simmering for months. It is believed that the alleged comments were made in conversation with a trusted friend who later hinted at them to a local football blogger, sparking a frenzy among supporters and pundits alike. This comes at a time when the Hoops have faced inconsistent form on the pitch, leading to questions about morale behind the scenes. Training ground observers have reportedly noticed strained interactions between certain senior figures, with fewer jokes and more terse exchanges during warm-ups. If true, ABADA's assessment would be a rare and candid glimpse into a dressing room usually portrayed as united. Fans are now left to wonder whether the perceived unity, often highlighted in official media, is merely a facade masking deeper rifts. The Parkhead faithful, already anxious over the team's recent performances, are demanding answers, though the club hierarchy has so far maintained a tight-lipped stance on the matter, refusing to fuel speculation further. The alleged claim has opened the floodgates for discussion across Glasgow, with rival supporters seizing the opportunity to taunt Celtic fans about internal unrest. Social media has been ablaze with theories, some suggesting that ABADA's words, if genuine, might reflect frustration over limited playing time or disagreements about tactical approaches under the current management. Others argue that the winger, known for his usually composed demeanor, would only resort to such strong language if the situation were truly untenable. Former players have weighed in cautiously, recalling that Celtic dressing rooms have seen similar personality clashes in the past, especially during periods of transition or after disappointing results. The story has also reignited debates about the manager's man management skills and whether a fresh voice is needed to steady the ship. Meanwhile, rival journalists are reportedly scrambling to confirm the authenticity of the remarks, with some believing they could be part of a deliberate leak to pressure the board into making changes. In pubs and supporters clubs across the city, the question persists: is this merely a sensationalized rumor or the first crack in a facade that has been carefully maintained for years? Either way, the sense of intrigue grows by the day. Amid this swirling storm, there are suggestions that the alleged toxic atmosphere could stem from divisions between domestic and international players, with cultural and language barriers contributing to misunderstandings. Sources claim that cliques have formed, with certain players sticking closely to countrymen or longtime friends, leading to subtle exclusion of others. While such dynamics are not uncommon in football squads, the concern here is that they might be undermining Celtic's cohesion on the pitch. The word disunited is particularly stinging in the context of a club that prides itself on its one club, one family ethos, often invoking its deep historical ties to unity and community spirit. Training insiders have apparently noted that small-sided games and practice sessions have become unusually intense, with a few heated exchanges spilling over after the whistle. The coaching staff are said to be aware of these tensions, though it remains unclear whether they have addressed them directly. Some supporters worry that if the story is true, it could destabilize the club during a crucial stage of the season. Others dismiss it as a sort of dressing room friction that blows over quickly, insisting that winning matches will cure most ills and restore a sense of togetherness. Adding fuel to the fire, a recent team meeting, according to speculative reports, ended abruptly when two senior players allegedly challenged the coaching staff's decisions in front of the entire squad. While such disagreements can be healthy if managed correctly, the perception among those close to the situation is that this was more of a confrontation than a constructive debate. ABADA, in this supposed account, may have viewed such incidents as evidence of a broader cultural problem within the team environment. His alleged description of the dressing room as toxic would then be a shorthand for deeper frustrations, perhaps a lack of trust, respect, or collective vision. Observers have pointed to body language during recent matches, noting less celebratory interaction after goals and fewer signs of encouragement during difficult spells. Though these observations are subjective, they feed into the narrative that all is not well behind the scenes. The danger for Celtic is that such a story, whether fact or fiction, can take on a life of its own, potentially affecting performances, unsettling fans, and inviting external pressure that forces hurried decisions from the boardroom. This, in turn, could trigger the very instability everyone wishes to avoid. For now, no official comment has been made by ABADA, Celtic's management, or the players' representatives, leaving the rumor to swirl unchecked in the media and among supporters. Some pundits believe silence is a tactical choice, designed to let the story fade without granting it further legitimacy, while others argue that the lack of denial only emboldens the speculation. In the absence of clarity, every minor gesture, substitution, or omission from the matchday squad will be scrutinized through the lens of this alleged toxic and disunited environment. If ABADA truly feels alienated, it raises questions about his future at the club, especially given interest from teams abroad who might offer him a fresh start. Yet it's equally possible that this is nothing more than an exaggerated rumor, inflated by a slow news cycle and the ever-hungry rumor mill of Scottish football. What remains undeniable is that the suggestion of unrest at Celtic Park has captured the attention of the footballing public, setting the stage for a potentially turbulent few weeks ahead. Whether this ends as a footnote or a turning point depends on how the club chooses to handle the mounting intrigue. Hello fan, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.